Grant's back in the mix. Here we go, Grant. So we talked about Jones. How damaging is it to lose Weston Richburg, the starting center?
I think it's damaging, but I wouldn't worry about the offense. I think the offense is hitting its stride. They did well with Richburg's backup in the fourth quarter, Ben Garland. I think the issue is the defense. I think I know they gave up 46 points in the last game, and a great defense doesn't do that. It's not that Robert Saleh's a fraud. He's very good. The whole defense is hurt. I mean, let me rattle off the names real quick. D4, DJ Jones, Julian Taylor, Ronald Blair, Quan Alexander, Jaquaski Tart, Richard Sherman, K'Wan Williams. That's 7 guys. You're not going to maintain a dominant defense that way. The Niners are in a position where if they're going to win the Super Bowl, it's going to be because of their offense, not because of their defense.
Wow.
Wow. Now, just counterpoint right there. Do you think Jimmy G, and I feel like we've been on the same page most of the year with Jimmy G, based on your tweets, Grant. It was very much so for me a wait and see type of thing with this guy. It's like, can he do it when the defense isn't playing lights out? Can he do it when the defense isn't gift wrapping him points in short fields? And in that Saints game, he showed, hey, I can do it. Do you think he can do that on a consistent basis if this defense is going to be banged up in a shell of themselves going forward?
I don't want to project too far forward. He might be able to do it on a consistent basis. All I know is that he's done it once. He has won one big game in his career. And let me put some perspective. He looks great. He has really played well the last 3 games. But his resume can't compare to even Colin Kaepernick's. And I'm not saying Colin Kaepernick is better, but Colin Kaepernick accomplished things. He won playoff games on the road. He beat New Orleans in New Orleans, and none of that made him a great quarterback. Jimmy Garoppolo is going to have to prove it over the next 3 or 4 years. That's what consistency is. Look at Derek Carr. Derek Carr has good games here and there for the Raiders, but he can't keep it going for a long stretch. Jimmy Garoppolo is going to have an opportunity to prove that over the rest of the season, but he's still a very young quarterback, basically in terms of game experience, and he hasn't proven anything yet. He's won one big game in his career.
What's impressed you most about this team over the last 3 weeks, Grant?
How they've totally reinvented themselves. They were a defense team, and probably a month and a half ago, we were thinking, great defense, great running game, but is that passing game good enough for them to win the Super Bowl? And now I think it clearly is. And forget Jimmy. Jimmy's playing well. He's matured a little bit. He hasn't thrown as many picks recently, but I think that the strides have been with the wide receivers.
Yeah.
They had to trade for Emmanuel Sanders because they felt they had nothing in the wide receiver room. Since they've gotten him, Deebo Samuel has stepped up big time to the point where he's almost better than Emmanuel Sanders. And Kendrick Bourne has stepped up too. He's a quality number 3 receiver. So they've gone from a team that you wondered, can they pass enough to win a Super Bowl in 2019 to a team that really actually has probably one of the better receiver trios in the league. That's an impressive turnaround in a month and a half.
It really has been night and day with Deebo Samuel over the past couple of weeks. I was saying the same thing to myself. Now, Grant, who scares you the most in the NFC? Who do you think is a team that can really give the Niners some problems? Obviously, we know who plays in that division, who already beat them. But what's a team where you're like, I don't know if the Niners has what it takes to get past them and go to a Super Bowl?
I think the Niners have what it takes to get past anyone. That being said, I think they're in the same tier as 2 other teams in the NFC. And I think it's New Orleans and Seattle. The Niners beat New Orleans, but by 2 points. And the Niners lost to Seattle, but by 3. I feel like those 3 are all sort of on the same level, and any team could win that matchup on any given Sunday. That's why it's so important for the 49ers to get home field advantage. Who knows if they can go back to New Orleans and win? Who knows if they can go to Seattle and win? But at home, they have a better chance. I think that's why they're playing so hard. They know that really the Seahawks and Saints match up quite well. The Seahawks have probably the MVP of the league or the runner-up, and the Saints have a great team that went toe-to-toe with the Niners. So those teams, just because the Niners beat the Saints doesn't mean they don't have to worry about them down the line. I feel like if the Niners and Saints played 10 times, each team would win 5 games, and same goes for the Seahawks.
Right, you kind of just teed up my next question. You kind of mentioned it in your answer there. How important is home field advantage for this Niners team?
I think it's very important, but what's more important is the bye week. If they end up with the 2nd seed and don't get the full home field advantage, that's okay because Levi's, let's be honest, Levi's isn't really a home field advantage anyway. And when they do sell it out, it's like half Niner fans and half opposing fans. So what they need is the bye week. because if they have to play the extra game in the wild card round, they'll probably win it. They probably could beat Dallas or Philly. I mean, you know about Philly, Jason. They're not that good, but that's a lot of traveling, man. That's an extra game. You know what I'm talking about. But I'm saying, if you have to go to Philly, it could be snowing, it could be raining. You could get more injuries. It's just extra fatigue that you don't need, and it's such an advantage to have that bye week. They need it.
What did you make of that talk going into the Saints game where, I was seeing some of this where, like, hey, it could actually be easier against Drew Brees, all right, than it was against Lamar Jackson, all right? I just found it amusing to hear something like that because you see the way Brees and Peyton are able to scheme against that type of defense, and it might have put a blueprint out there on how to attack the 49ers unit.
Yeah, people who said that probably don't watch the Saints very much. I think the logic was, well, look what the Niners did to Jared Goff and to Aaron Rodgers. But Drew Brees is actually much better than them. And Aaron Rodgers, he has not aged that gracefully. When he was younger, he liked to extend the play, run around, and throw deep like Russell Wilson. Well, he's old now. He can't get away from the Niners pass rushers. Drew Brees doesn't play like that. Drew Brees is 40 years old, and he's a master of his craft. He gets rid of the ball really quickly, and he showed that if you neutralize that Niners pass rush with just a quick passing attack, you can feast on their coverage because it's not that good. It's a pass rush dominated defense. So to say that he showed a blueprint, yeah, I guess he did. It's be as good as Drew Brees and get the ball out that quick. I think Tom Brady could do that, but I don't know how many quarterbacks can really pull it off like he did.
Now, speaking of overlooking opponents, obviously everyone's eyes is on that Seahawks game at the end of the year, and then of course it's the Falcons next week, which you figure the Niners should win that game. But there's that Rams game lingering in the middle, and the Rams are playing some really good football. Do you think that could be a potential trap game for San Francisco?
It's a tough game, and they might lose it, but I wouldn't consider it a trap game because it's a divisional opponent. The one I would consider a trap game is this one against the Falcons.
Right.
Because I feel like it has all the earmarks of a trap game. It's the easiest of the upcoming three. The two after are divisional games that the Niners are focused on. The Falcons have 4 wins. The Niners are coming off an extremely emotional win in New Orleans. It's the one game you would naturally overlook. And the thing about the Falcons is they've been playing really well recently. They beat the Saints in New Orleans and just smoked them, like only gave up 9 points. It was a much more convincing win than what the Niners had in New Orleans. That's not to say that the Falcons are going to win or that they're better than the Niners. It's just that they're better than their record indicates. They have a new defensive coordinator, which means they're tough to prepare for. And they have Matt Ryan and Julio Jones still, which means they have a puncher's chance to win. If the Niners don't take care of it, if they lose this game, it gets weird. Because I don't know if you guys realize it, the Niners still haven't clinched a playoff spot. They need to win this game. It's almost a must-win game because if they lose this, they can lose to the Rams. And then if you lose 2, then you're going to Seattle with the playoffs on the line. You don't want to go to there. So this is a trap game coming up. They got to take care of business.
How much do you consider the burnout factor with this team because they have played so many emotional games?
And not only that, their bye week was week 4. I think they're exhausted. I think they're banged up. And if you look at their defensive line in particular, that was the strength of the team. It was talented and it was deep. Now it's not so deep. D Ford's gone, DJ Jones is gone, and Julian Taylor. So what you're having is Buckner, Armstead, and Bosa played most of the snaps. Instead of playing 40 snaps a game, 40 supercharged, energetic snaps, now they're playing 60 kind of sluggish, get-through-it snaps. And it's just not the same dominant defensive line, which I think has a trickle-down effect on the entire defense. And that's why we saw it give up 46 points on Sunday. I think we are seeing a fatigue factor, and it's injuries, it's the early bye week, and it's the D-line going from being all-world to being more, not ordinary, but ordinary.
When did that transformation happen for you? Because I think, a lot of people will look at the Sunday night game against the Packers. You're like, oh, wow, this team is like, they got the national attention. But, yeah, I'm not seeing the same kind of dominance from the 49ers pass rush.
That game they had against the Panthers was the ultimate beatdown. They won 51-13. Nick Bosa had 3 sacks and an interception. It was like the greatest game a defensive player's ever had. Since I would call that the marker. That was their biggest blowout, and since then they played 5 games. They struggled twice against the Cardinals. They lost to the Seahawks. They blew out the Packers. They lost to the Ravens, and they narrowly beat the Saints. They've gone from a dominant team to a team that wins close games or loses close games. I feel like that's the cutoff, that game against the Panthers. The last 5 games, the Niners have been, what, they're 3-2, and they've squeaked out some wins. They're not the same team. They were 8-0 at one point. Now they're 3-2 since then, and they could have been 2-3 had Sean Payton managed the game a little bit better. So curious to see. They're kind of limping into the final stretch.
Yeah, and I've also heard the argument, talking about the Seahawks, where their record in 1-score games, but you put them on kind of the elite tier of the entire league.
Yeah, I mean, they're not that good. Like, if you took away Russell Wilson, they'd have like 3 wins, but they have Russell Wilson. He's the best quarterback in the league. I don't care that Lamar Jackson's going to win the MVP. Great for Lamar Jackson. I'll take Russell Wilson. And the thing about the Seahawks is it seems like they don't blow anyone out. They're always in close games, whether it's against a good team or a bad team, which is frustrating, and it makes you think they're not that serious, not that good. But if they're in a 1-score game against anyone, you figure they're in the fourth quarter, you figure they're probably going to win because they have Russell Wilson and Pete Carroll, and other teams don't. And I still figure that holds true. Against the Niners, you got Jimmy Garoppolo, who's working with 21 career starts. I mean, I feel like Russell Wilson probably has 21 career come from behind victories in the fourth quarter or close to it. That's the difference.
Yeah, and it's going to be fun to watch down the stretch. Grant Cohn, thank you so much for joining us. Covers the 49ers for the Santa Rosa Press-Democrat. You can follow his excellent content at Grant Cohn on Twitter. He breaks down the games. He has full-blown analysis. Thank you so much for joining us, Grant. Enjoy the games.
Great Twitter follow. Thanks, Grant.
Thank you so much for having me, Mark and Jason. You guys are the best. Appreciate it.
Have a good one. Yeah, love chatting with Grant. It's always a fun experience. And I like what he said about Jimmy Garoppolo.